Okay, people pleasing. One of the topics that is probably most common in the therapy room, but also super taboo in real life. Tonight we're going to talk about it. My name is Bassy Schwartz. I'm an LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapist. I practice in 5 towns in Hewlett, New York, as well as teletherapy. I specialize in relational issues. So anyone struggling in their relationships with family members, romantic partners, friends, whatever it may be. I am specialized in emotionally focused therapy, which is the highly rated evidence-based model for healing relationship wounds on the market. And it's just the philosophy of everything I do, the way I live, the way I engage with people in my life, and the way that I heal with my clients as they go along their journey of reevaluating how their relationships have worked or not worked, or served them or not served them in their lives. So tonight we're going to talk about how people pleasing is super involved in that. There are 2 types of people who are going to benefit from this live. There are people who know that they people please and want more insight. If that's you, hang on a sec. We'll get back to you. I'm just going to move over just my notes. And then there are people who feel miscalibrated in their relationships. They don't know why. They might feel like they're always the schmata, always the martyr, always resentful, but they really can't figure out what's going on. So those are the people we're going to talk to first, because people pleasing can be very subtle. It can be often masked as generosity and can only be triggered with certain people. So if we don't know that we're people pleasing, we might think that we are just not calibrated in our relationships, just really, giving more than we're getting, but like we're not really sure why. And I think that a lot of us who have grown up with wounds from our childhood of a full gamut of things, but often not being listened to, not being heard, not being appreciated, feeling like we need to adapt who we are to fit in, etc., can kind of develop us into people who are super attuned to the world around us and feel that if the world around us is happy, we're happy. So we are going to make sure the world around us is happy, and then we will be able to be safe and fulfilled, which is not true and should never have happened. So how do we start? Where do we start with this? So we have to start by noticing when we're putting other people's opinions before establishing our own. So immediately, if we are in a situation where something happens and we can't even get to how we feel, it's not even on the table, because we're already well, this is how it's done, or this is what the other person wants, so I'm going to go for that. That's the easiest option here. Or be this is the thing to do, this is what everyone's doing, and it's so subtle. It could be so subtle. If there's a million examples, I don't want to single out anyone, but just in the way we make decisions in terms of what works for us and what doesn't work for us. Should we be dating? Should we be having more babies? Should we be getting involved in community service? Should we take that job? Should we say yes to this chesed opportunity? Should we say yes to this social activity? Should we say yes to this friendship? Should we say yes to this Yontif plan? Whatever it may be, how does that work in terms of us talking to ourselves first, having a conversation about what works for us, and then going on to what works for everyone else. Another thing is that we might get into situations where we find ourselves saying or doing things that make us feel guilty or uncomfortable, but we do it because it's what everyone else is doing. So going out with friends, let's say, and they're talking about things or doing things or treating someone a certain way that you don't really feel is calibrated with who you are. But at the end of the day, you wanted to be in this outing. You wanted to be with these friends. They seem like a good group for you. And then you get home and you feel guilty about how you behaved, or you feel uncomfortable with how you were treated. That's a good sign that you might be putting other people's needs before yours. Another thing is being eager to fit in, right? We're at the Shabbos meal, everyone's talking about something, and it's not really Shabbos table talk, but we get into it because it's what everyone's talking about. And starting to notice how these things resonate in our body and in our mind is a great way to just start to understand where people-pleasing comes up for us and where we just really feel misaligned. Another thing is if you often feel not good enough, which a lot of us do, and it's so sneaky how it comes up. It's not for everyone, for some people, it's really just a constant feeling of inadequacy, but for others, the feeling of inadequacy is masked by just feeling like, okay, I participated in this social thing or this community thing, and at the end of the day, I don't feel fulfilled by it. I don't feel like I did enough, or needing that promotion at work to feel like I have a sense of self, or needing to get validation from my partner about something that is really something I need to work on with me. Now, partners can be helpful for that, but if we're only seeking validation from our partners, and if they're upset with us, we can't go on, and we don't feel good enough, and we can't exist, or a friend or a family member obviously is the same. We know that our needs and someone else's needs are not in the right order, are not prioritized properly. So stopping to people please starts with learning to hear our inner voice, which is a huge, huge journey. It could take a lifetime, honestly, but every step is very gratifying. So it's not like just trying and feeling like this is a mountain in front of you means that it's not worth it. It means that even that feeling, that like pleasure of just making a decision that works for you because you listen to yourself and it aligns with who you are and you're calibrated and you're doing something aligned with your values, is so gratifying in itself that will perpetuate more getting to know yourself and more valuing your opinion before anyone else's. So how do we do that? Step 1, let's validate that we are good people who want peace, joy, and connection in our lives. And however this people-pleasing started, it did not start because we don't know how to function and we didn't get the memo on the social cues, or we were rejected as children for a good reason and we should keep that up. We should keep doing that to stay afloat in this life. That's not the truth. The truth is that we're good people who have always wanted to connect from day one. At every stage of our lives, we wanted connection, we want fulfillment, we want meaning in our relationships. And if we learned how to do that the wrong way, it's not too late to learn how to do it the right way. And it's okay. We're good people. We have good interests. We have good values. And maybe it'll even make us better people. Maybe it'll even make us more loving ourselves to finally take the plunge at acknowledging that we are people-pleasing or codependent or misaligned in our relationships to the point that we need to turn inward and focus on ourselves more. Step 2, let's figure out, this is a big part of what we do in therapy, how that people-pleasing served us in the first place. Meaning now we've acknowledged that we're good people and we want to resolve this to have a better life. Okay, great. Well, we did this for so long for a reason. We were people-pleasing for so long for a reason. It worked for us. It served us in some way, either in our family of origins or in previous relationships or in our current relationships. Something perpetuated this people-pleasing to the point that we're feeling really, stomped on and railroaded and underappreciated and inadequate. So we got here somehow, but we got here for a good reason. So what was that reason? And is it still serving us? No. Okay. At least we know now why it's here. And, we can kind of then go to step 3, which is when we know those situations are going to come up. When we know, oh, I developed this people-pleasing because of XYZ, which means that if I'm in this specific kind of situation, my people-pleasing is definitely going to come up. So now I know it's coming. I'm about to go out with friends. I've always been bullied. I really want to fit in. I need to fit in tonight. I cannot afford to not fit in tonight. I know that's going to lead me to say yes when I mean no, to talk about things I don't want to talk about, to push down my greatness, to, validate someone when they're doing something that I think is inappropriate, whatever it may be. I know what's coming up tonight. I need a plan. Okay. We're going to soothe ourselves. We're going to say, you are going out tonight with these friends because you really want friends. You deserve to have friends. It's a good thing that you want friends. It's also a really good thing that your friends appreciate you for who you are. And maybe if someone starts talking about something that you don't feel aligned with or that doesn't work for you, we're going to next create boundaries to put ourselves first. So now that I've soothed myself, I said, it's okay that you're in a situation. You can handle this. You can learn to soothe yourself here. This situation makes sense for you because of what you went through or your experiences before. Okay, what's the boundary? I'm going to say XYZ when something comes up I don't want to talk about. Or I'm just going to excuse myself from the conversation. Or I'm just going to sit there and, be an observer. Or I might say, I'm only going to go out with these friends X amounts of times in a couple months because I like the social stuff, but I don't really want those to be my values or what goes through my head. With family, I'm giving friends as an example almost because it's like a little bit easier. It's a little bit more subtle. But obviously with family, this can be very, very triggering for so many of us. And putting boundaries is so complex because, like, what do you mean you're putting boundaries with me? I'm your parent. I'm your sibling. I'm your kid. What do you mean you're putting boundaries with me? Like, we're having yontif together. We're doing it. Like, that's what families do. And this yontif, you're the one who has to sleep in the basement. Even if you're allergic, it doesn't matter. You're sleeping in the basement. Like, the dust, it's a part of life. Get over it. Like that kind of thing. And to put up a boundary and either say, like, I'm not sleeping in the basement, or I can't come, or I'm not coming because if you think it's okay to discount my allergy to dust for 8 days, I'm not going to be able to accommodate that, etc. I don't want anyone to get like too triggered from this. It's big. We need to remember that boundaries are a door where there is a wall. So walls exist, right, between us. We kind of have like a bubble around us. Everyone's an individual. Everyone has their own body, their own mind, their own heart, and there's walls. Okay, they just exist. Maybe you were taught in your family of origin that they don't exist. Maybe you were taught that yours don't matter, but everyone has space between them and the next person. That's how God created us as individuals. We have our own minds, we have our own space, we have our own being. And if there's a wall between us, then boundaries are when we invite someone in through our wall into us. And that doesn't mean we even let them in all the way, but it even just invites them into our space. And family and friends and people you grew up with and people who live close to you or are in close proximity do not have automatic access to that space. That space is designed that you curate who comes in and who comes out. And no one has automatic access. No one has automatic entitlement to take up your space when they are not treating you in a way that's aligned with your values. Boundaries. Especially in our community. I think that our community is very close-knit and does not necessarily have as much insight into what this space and the walls that we're describing could be and what their purpose is and how impactful it could be if we really learned to respect each other. Definitely, let's say with the war, I think a lot of people have put their need to take up space in other people's categories a little bit aside and have said, I'm just going to respect you and respect who you are, and we're going to join together because now there's mutual respect. And I think it's been a really beautiful thing, and I've talked about that in a previous live. But I think that there's definitely a lot of work to do in terms of creating healthy spaces for appropriate settings for things to be spoken about and engaged with and taken care of. And where it's not appropriate means that it's probably misaligned in some way, that it's happening in this inappropriate space, and figure out, from a systemic level, why we got in a situation where kids are learning about XYZ at school instead of at home, for example. Or, why in dating people think they can ask certain questions that they can't. Like, what's the system behind that? So I definitely hear you. I think that's like a whole different topic, but there's definitely a lot of systemic issues in terms of having appropriate places to talk about and let out the right feelings and the right thoughts and the right ideas, and then them not being brought out in places that are inappropriate, which lead people to believe that they need to please or mask or cover up who they are in that way in order to fit in. So you're totally right. And then there's step 5. And I know this is super simplistic, and I know that this could take years in therapy. I know that a lot of us are in people-pleasing recovery or codependency recovery, and I think it really makes sense in so many aspects of the generation before us and the generation now, and how we're always in each other's businesses. Don't even get me started on social media and how there is just no space to be who you are, because keeping up with the trends is like the number one priority, and if you're not keeping up with the trends, you're not on the right track, even though you're totally discounting yourself to keep up with said trend. I could go on about that for a really long time, but it's definitely seeping into us. Just scrolling and just knowing what everyone else is doing all the time literally is the antidote to being able to hear our inner voice. That's it. That's all I'm going to say on that. And I don't think people realize how much people-pleasing we engage in on a regular basis and how much it seeps into our thoughts and our sense of self and loving ourselves and appreciating who we are. It's like not even a topic, right? Like, you don't need to love and appreciate who you are. You need to build a life and be successful and be productive and produce and be effective and be popular and share ideas that people love and make everyone really want to be you and all of that. And I don't know, there's something to say about just being totally attuned with yourself and living this life of interconnectedness, which obviously, I mean, maybe not so obviously, produces outer connectedness, but in an authentic, genuine way rather than in a forced or sometimes trauma bonding way where we're attracted to relationships that, you know, produce more of the negative feelings that we're so used to instead of producing feelings that are actually healthy for us and stabilizing for us and can breed new ideas and new, you know, newness, just like freshness in our lives, rejuvenation. So yeah, step 5 is that we learn to enjoy the inner peace that comes when we tune into ourselves and feel secure in our being and experience life without worrying what everyone else thinks about it and without being constantly on guard or on edge that we're doing the wrong thing or the next person isn't going to appreciate what we've done or they're going to reject us for what we've done and living in that panic. And we can just get through the day and learn to honor who we are and to enjoy who we are and to engage with things that feel totally aligned with us without needing the external validation, without that fear, without that anxiety, which I think is kind of where the people-pleasing started in the first place. So this is definitely a huge, huge topic. I'm happy to continue with anyone if you want to reach out. It's a huge part of my practice and what I do. I believe that so much of us have developed and moved and shaped who we are as adults because of false notions that we learned about ourselves as children and how we really don't always have the tools when we merge into adulthood to listen to our inner voice. You know, we all have our own DNA. It produces its own chemical sequence, and to really learn our chemical sequence and realize that that's our superpower and that's what is going to give us the best life possible rather than the sequence. I mean, there's so much noise out there of like, this will change your life. Do this one thing if you want to have a good relationships. Do this one thing if you want to be the smartest and the best and the most successful. And I'm telling you that the one thing to do if you want to have a good, meaningful, wholesome, connected, loving, exciting, thrilling life is to look into yourself and say, what is my chemical sequence that God gave me emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, career-wise, whatever, maybe professionally, and say, what is that? And tap into that sequence, learn what my magic equation is, my magic formula is, and put that out in the world unapologetically. So I'm happy to continue that with anyone who wants to talk. How much is personality and how much is learned? It's a good question. I believe that we are all born into infancy whole. We're born as people who are able to love and be loved safely, who are secure, have secure attachment, not understand obviously consciously, but our brains are capable of understanding love and connection and openness and security in, you know, kind of an open-ended way, infinite amounts. And our experiences from day one, even in infancy, when we don't seem like we're conscious, our brain is learning, especially the toddler years, especially childhood, all the way up to really like early adulthood. We really digest everything that is happening, and we use it as evidence for how we should curate who we are. It's very subconscious, it's very subtle, but curate who we are to be people who are loved and approved of and accepted. And we work really hard to make sure that those things happen. And often we work really, really hard and we lose a lot of ourselves in the process. And now is the best time to gain it back, because we all deserve that. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's really learned. It's really learned. I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist, but just from the research I've done and the, attachment theory really lends itself to acknowledging the role of childhood and infancy on the development of the future being, even as an independent being. So it's really interesting and really unique to each person, but also very universal, that if we feel safe, loved, and accepted for who we are, no matter what, unconditionally as children, obviously within boundaries, but really unconditionally loved and accepted and honored as individuals, as children, that brings a different kind of adult than someone who is rejected and criticized and blamed and, dismissed and dishonored and disrespected in childhood. So, yeah. I think we're good on the questions. This was really nice. I think this is such a refreshing topic for us all to talk about and to create space on the internet for, and I love it. And I hope to speak to you soon if you want to continue. And anyways, have a great night, everyone.